What's up, everybody? We're back for another episode. We got our boy Aaron Gettys, Mr. G Money, cameraman extraordinaire, bow killer, you name it. Aaron's done it, but we got him back on the podcast. I really wanted to get Aaron back on to go over our Nebraska hunt. You know, I was the one behind the bow, but Aaron was the man responsible for all the photos you guys have been seeing from that Nebraska hunt, as well as a lot of the video. We're going to be coming out with a cool video series from that in the near future, so keep your eyes out for that. But wanted to get Aaron on here, talk about that, because it was both of these Texas boys' first time to go chase whitetail out of the state of Texas, where we weren't in a box blind, we weren't in a pop-up, or we weren't in a tripod. You know, very rarely do we get up in tree stands, ladder stands, because there's not a whole lot of tall trees out here in Texas. So got Aaron on board, and we went out there, got up to Nebraska, and we're going to talk Nebraska, and we're talking deer hunting. Who knows? We might go down some freaking rabbit holes. It's Aaron, so you never know. But Aaron, I started out the podcast. You've already kind of been on the one before where we sat down with Josh and Logan. But I really want you to give us a 30,000-foot view of who you are, and let's just get to know you, and we'll dive into it, man.
Yeah, man. Where do I start? I feel like everyone says they've been hunting forever, but that's the case. I grew up hunting here in Texas. My grandfather was a big hunter up in Michigan, so I've always kind of been interested in it, been into it. I used to guide and outfit, run a ranch out near Abilene. Kind of got into the photography side of it from that, wanting to take good pictures for the ranch and good trophy shots for my hunters, and that kind of led me down the photography and videography rat hole. And then one thing led to another. I kind of picked it up and had a kind of a knack for it, I guess. And now you seem to like my pictures enough to get me to go on trips with you and take pictures and videos for you guys. So
I mean,
we are.
You do a pretty good job, an okay job. I mean, enough to where I can put up with you for an extended period of time.
Yeah. My skills are good enough to put up with my sarcasm.
Okay. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Well, I want to talk. How did you get into bow hunting? That's a question I want to ask, because I feel like a lot of people, they either get into it super early, they get into it super late in life, or kind of like midlife, or they've done it since they're a kid. How did you get into bow hunting?
My grandfather, who kind of really got me into hunting when I was younger, he used to love watching Tom Miranda's show back on ESPN back in the good old days.
Yep.
And so I kind of always had like a knack for, no, I guess not a knack, but I was always drawn to bow hunting. I was always interested in, man, he's getting 20, 30 yards. He's right on top of it. That seems super cool. That seems really hard. And then, kind of as I progressed in life, I picked up a bow in high school. I got one from, there was like $300 from a pawn shop in high school, and kind of shot in my backyard. And,
yeah,
and just kind of rednecked my way through shooting a bow at that time. And then, kind of with, as I got more involved in hunting and kind of got back into it after I'd got done playing basketball in college, I found, or not found, but paid more attention to like Dudley's Instagram and Cam Haynes and Levi Morgan and those kind of guys. I was like, man, this is a whole other thing. I like the fact that it has to be done year round. Like, it's not just, pick up your gun, shoot at 200 yards, and okay, I'm good, and go and shoot. Like, it's a task that has to be practiced. It has to be executed on regularly to stay consistent and to stay good at it. And so I think my basketball background and having to spend time in the gym and spend time shooting shots and working on my form and technique kind of transitioned very similarly into archery. And so it's just always kind of been something I was interested in and kind of just fell in love with.
I'm right there with you, man. And like, the funny thing is, like, we went to college together, and we knew each other because I was coaching we both went to the same university, and I coached there when you were finishing up. And I had no idea you were into hunting in general until I think I saw it was after you graduated, you started shooting bows. I'm like, wait a minute, this dude's been like coming into our office and chilling on our couch, and I didn't even know this about you.
Yeah, man, it kind of took a back seat. Like, I was real into hunting a lot when I was in high school. hunted all the time, but it was primarily rifle hunting and just, going out 3 or 4 times a year to buddies' leases or ranches or wherever I could.
Yeah.
And then, I played basketball. So it's, I have zero free time during hunting season, right? Like I'm playing basketball from, the end of September through February, right? Like that's the whole hunting season.
Yeah.
And so finally, once basketball was done, I was like, hey man, like I have time. I can go back into this. I can find that passion again. I have that time that I can dedicate to something else. I have this huge void of time missing now. And so I kind of just was able to jump headfirst back into it.
So, okay, so you're bow hunter, you do some camera stuff for us on the side. What does Aaron do for a day-to-day job?
Day to day, man, I am a small business owner here in New Braunfels. So I am working on getting an app up and rolling for local businesses. Me and my partner have a version in Abilene, and I'm working on getting a version launched here in New Braunfels.
That sounds pretty dope, man. The app way is the way to go. Now, tell us a little bit about that app. Like, what is it? I'm kind of interested.
Yeah, so it's I guess the best way of describing it would be it's kind of like a discount app for local businesses. So we only feature locally owned businesses.
Okay.
And it's everything as far as industry goes. It's everything. We have pet groomers and plumbers, electricians, gyms, restaurants, boutiques, welders, window tinters, anything and everything, auto repair, like literally anything locally owned business. We have a spot, or we can create a spot for you to be featured on our app. And then most of those businesses feature, 10% off your purchase, or, buy one, get one half off, or whatever they want, if they want to have any sort of offer to the community. So it's really local businesses giving a little bit of deals for the local community to go and shop. And so we wanted it to have that, built by the community for the community feel. And it's really been well received so far in Abilene, and I'm excited for it in New Braunfels.
I like it, man. So if you're listening to this and you're in New Braunfels, Texas, make sure you hit up my boy Aaron. Aaron, entrepreneur, bow hunter, patriot, all the above. Let's dive into us Texas boys going to Nebraska, because I'm also going to be recording a podcast with Dan Staten that I want to bridge some gaps here, because I feel like within the hunting community that there's this weird space that there's the people who hunt up in the northeast, whatever you want to call it, Iowa, Ohio, and they're up in tree stands, feeds not allowed, sitting in all day sits, small seasons, and they see us down here in Texas sitting by feeders, protein feeders. You can go in. There's some ranches down here that you can go sit and see 100 deer in one evening. And so I'll be getting Dan Staten on here to talk about that a little bit, because we brought him down from Washington to hunt in Texas for the first time. But I'll get him on for that. But I want to talk about us going from Texas up to a place where there's no feed, like zero. You can't use any kind of like Big and J. There's no corn, no feed whatsoever. Like you can't even throw a pumpkin or anything out there at these deer for them to stop. Like you're sitting on a trail in a tree with the mock scrape. So what was that like for you? Obviously you're sitting behind the camera, but for you to go up for the first time, strap on a tree harness and go up 25 feet in a tree, what was that like for you, Aaron?
Dude, it was fun. I really enjoyed it because it was so different. Like you said, there's no supplemental feed, there's no nothing. And like where we were, it wasn't even like there's other places where they're hunting food plots, which I don't know how most people feel about that. But to me, it's kind of similar as a feeder. It's just in Texas, you can't grow crops like that. But
right.
Iowa, Kansas, other places where you're planting clover or turnips or whatever you're planting specifically to hunt deer over.
Yeah.
But like where we were, there wasn't even that. Like it was literally us like trying to position ourselves on these travel corridors as the deer were going out to those feed sources or coming back to bed. I loved it though. I thought it was a bunch of fun. The seat in the tree stand was not very comfortable. I will say that. That was a whole other story. But no, man,
I will say that sitting in a tree stand with somebody for, how many hours do you think we spent that entire?
We had
close to 100 hours.
It had to be,
like
man.
70 hours total.
75, 80 hours, something like that. I mean, it was it was a good 10 to 11 hours for a week. So I mean, yeah, we were looking at 70 hours.
You get to know somebody really well, and I got to say, like, and I know
Oh, it got weird, dude.
it got weird, man. Like, God dang, like every time like your freaking seat would squeak, I'm like, oh my God, this guy needs to hold still. We're not gonna see crap right now. Or every time
Yeah.
mine squeaked, I was like, ugh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was definitely a different game, and there's probably a lot of people out there that are like, oh, where were you sitting? Were you not sitting on cut corn or beans? Like, no, we had no feed because
Nothing.
like we were basically hunting a cattle ranch. We had access to close to 4,000 acres, but of that 4,000 acres, there are these woodlots, or they had all these different names for just these small stretches or very small acreages of heavily wooded areas. I mean, they were probably
weren't even acreages. They were like 30 yards wide by like 100 yards long. Like they're not.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of cover at all.
Yeah, like maybe an acre or two, but these deer are
Right.
basically just kind of bedding in these, and they're just rotating around. So it was hard to get these deer figured out, because the other thing was these farmers or ranchers, whatever you want to call them, had come in, a couple weeks before we got there, and they had to harvest all their corn. All the beans were cut. So we literally had no food source. So, the deer density up there was pretty low. And I know Josh from Hunt Stand, Josh Dowkey's probably going to hear me say this, but I know he wasn't too fond of where we hunted just because of the low deer densities, and it was a tough hunt. But for me, you and I kind of got in a honey hole there after like day 2. We kind of found this little honey hole that we did not leave because there were constantly, it was just a travel corridor, like this big intersection. But I'm making plans to go back next year. Like, I have a vendetta to kill a deer out there. I do.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a good spot. I liked it. I mean, and part of the, I feel like a lot of guys from Texas are like, I'm not going to go sit up in a freaking tree all day. Like, there's just these stigmas. And I think before people go and knock doing that, like, I had never experienced anything like this, but I wanted to, like you said, growing up, before there was Outdoor Channel, Sportsman's Channel, or like Waypoint TV now, you and I grew up when we were real young watching ESPN Outdoors. And I just remember watching Real Tree Outdoors or Monster Bucks with these guys up in these tree stands. And I was like, I want to do that one day. I'm going to do that. So it's kind of like living out a childhood dream of mine to get to go up there.
For sure. No, it was. It's funny how there's always like these weird stigmas with like, oh, I would never go and do that. Like, why would I go sit in a tree stand for 12 hours a day when I could hunt South Texas and see 30 deer from my box blind with Mr. Buddy heater and my coffee? And then, but what's so funny is like, it's flipped the other way too. Cause those guys in like Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska are like, why would I want to go hunt in Texas? It's all just 200-acre high fenced, and there's deer raising 1-acre pins that have Christmas trees out of their heads. And it's just like, people just get these weird dichotomies. Like, it's never like in the middle, which it usually is. It's always like one extreme or the other.
Yeah.
And then they don't end up ever doing it. And it's just so weird to me that people get stuck in these little, these little echo chamber thought bubbles.
Well, and it's funny you say that, because whenever we had Dan come down, after he had killed his deer, I had asked him, or it might have been on the way down, I don't remember, but I had asked him, I was like, so man, like, what do you think about Texas? He goes, man, I got to be honest, like, my perception has changed. And
yeah, for sure.
It was after he killed, now that I'm thinking about it. And I go, what do you mean? Like, tell me. He goes, well, like, my perception of Texas before coming down here, of course, this is coming from a guy who, Dan chases elk across the mountains all of September, parts of October, and even into early November. Like, he just killed an Arizona elk in November with his bow. But he never experienced Texas before. He never hunted before. And so after we sat in a blind together for 3 days, he saw all the deer that we did, and he's like, dude, I thought I was going to be coming down to a ranch where every deer was named. It might have had a tag in its ear, or like you said, it had a Christmas tree. But the ranch that we were on, like, sure, was it high fence? Yes, but it was 1,500 acres, and it's managed by the state. And this is a property that wasn't commercially hunted. It was just a place that somebody had, and It's 1,500 acres, high fence. The state issues it was up to a little over 150 buck tags for this one piece of property, and then
they're the MLD tags.
MLD tags, and then hundreds of doe tags because the deer density there is insane. Like we went
Yeah.
driving around one night. It was the first evening we got there. We didn't even hunt. We just kind of drove around the property to show Dan, and we probably saw close to 200-300 deer that evening.
Right.
And Dan, his eyes just lit up. But after that hunt, he's like, dude, my perception completely changed. Like, it is a challenge to kill a deer down here in Texas.
Yeah, and
100%.
Right, like for me, like that's what I used to do for a living, right? Like I used to guide and outfit hunts on a ranch. And so like I would get clients all the time that would say that and be like, I was really skeptical about coming doing this high fenced hunt, and I thought it was just going to be a, shoot it from the living room out of the window kind of deal. And unfortunately, there are places that are like that, right?
Yeah.
Where it's it's a 200-acre field and there's one feeder and one blind and 3 trees.
Yep.
And you can see the whole thing, but most places aren't like that. Like the places that are like, that have like where people get that stigma of hunting Texas, like those places are so far and few between that, a lot of people really just kind of write it off and don't ever give it a chance because they think that that's what it is. And like you said, like most ranches aren't that way, or they see, high fenced MLD and they go, oh, every deer has an ear tag and every deer, is just going to walk right into the feeder when, from my experience, most of the time, those mature bucks don't come to the feeders because they know that
they're smart.
That's where stuff dies. Right. Like,
that's
they
danger.
get super weary of that stuff. And it is a lot harder. And then when you come down here too, you realize, how thick some of that mesquite brush is in South Texas, or if you're out in the West Texas Hill Country where you're in these cedar, these rolling cedar hills, and you're like, oh, you can't spot and stock.
No.
You have to sit in a blind. It's too thick. Or, oh, this is just, there's 3 inches of dirt and it's solid rock. Like you can't grow anything. You're like, you have to use a feeder. Like that's the only, it's the most feasible, most efficient way to hunt.
Well, yeah,
and so
it is. It is. And I mean, the thing that people don't understand too is with these high fence ranches is sure, it might be high fence. There probably aren't tag deer. There are ranches that do have it, but there are deer that don't have tags in their ear. But the rancher just wants to grow a superb deer herd. He wants to have big deer. He wants to manage it and get giant deer out there that him and his family can hunt, or he might want to sell some hunts, or he might want to commercially hunt this place one day.
Yeah.
So I know that, well, I mean, now that I'm thinking back on it, even Dan's deer, as big as this place was, as many deer as they had, they do have game cameras out there so they can get an idea of what type of mature bucks they have out there. The deer that Dan killed, they didn't even know this deer existed. It showed up, and, the management program that they were on, they wanted us to shoot a mature deer, and they had a certain class of antler size that they wanted us to be in range. And this deer that came in, I looked at it, I told Dan, I was like, dude, this deer, said, I know it's a mature deer, but when I look at this rack, I'm like, I'm not sure that's in our range. And so I got to get the green light from the ranch manager. I'm sitting there trying to film Dan and message the manager at the same time. And he's like, dude, I don't even know what deer that is. They'd never seen it.
And I think I forgot how big that place you told me was, but I would see that on the places that I would run. Like there'd be 3 or 4 deer every year. I'd be like, I don't know what deer that is. I've never seen that deer before.
Heck, I hunt 200
and
acres
it's just
low fence, and that happens.
Right. Like I was on 2,000 acres of high fence, and that would happen. And you would think, I'm running 7 or 8 trail cameras on feeders, on protein feeders. You would think that I've seen every deer.
Nope.
I'm looking through thousands of pictures, and every year I'd be like, never seen that deer before. And it would be, a 3-year-old, 4-year-old buck. I'm like, never seen that deer before.
Deer can travel some crazy extents. Like, look at Nebraska. What these deer were doing, hopping around from these woodlots. 4,000 acres with very small section of woodlots. I think we had seen one deer on a game camera that they'd been showing us that had been coming in regularly, ended up coming over to where you and I were sitting that was miles apart from where this game camera was before.
Yeah, I think it was. I think he said it was like 4 or 5 miles away from the one trail that he was using where we first hunted to where we ended up hunting the rest of the week, it was like 4 or 5 miles.
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think a
As the
lot.
crow flies too. So he may be, he's bouncing back to these woodlots covering way more ground than that.
Oh, 100%. So let me ask you a question. When it comes to Nebraska, right? What was, let's talk about some good things that you took away from this hunt. Some, I wouldn't necessarily call them bad things. I guess you could say things you learned from. But let's look at, for lack of better terms, negatives and positives of this hunt. What were some good things that you took away from this hunt?
I think just the experience in and of itself was the best for me. Just to be able to actually be able to hunt Midwest whitetails out of a tree stand. Obviously you were hunting, but it's still, for the cameraman, it's the same experience. Like I have to be just as quiet. I have to be in the same positions. I have to be there just as long as you do. So I still consider that like me hunting.
Yeah.
But just to finally like live out that, like childhood dream, like you said, of hunting Midwest whitetails from a tree stand like that. Any other good things? I learned a lot from Josh, actually, just getting around to sit around at camp at night and listen to his experience and knowledge of hunting that style. I took a lot away from him.
Oh, heck yeah. Like him being from Minnesota.
Completely. Yeah. He was a wealth of information. And just, him working for HuntSend, he's for as long as he has, whatever, 10, 12 years, whatever he said, he's talked to people and written articles and done these researches and had research articles sent to him. And so he just had this, this bank of information on whitetails and just hunting in general. And I took a lot away from him, just getting to talk to him and pick his brain on stuff.
Oh, dude, when he told us to piss in make a mock scrape and then piss in it, I thought he was freaking insane. Like,
dude, my mind was blown. I was like, there's no way that makes any sense. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, I carry in a gallon jug to me to piss in the stand in Texas.
Yeah, and then he brings up an article of a guy that researched it for 12 years, and the guy pees in it every time and kills bucks every year. I'm like, huh, sure as shit. Guess so.
Yeah, and then we did that when we got to our little honey hole. We did that, and then the next morning, we had a shooter buck, like, literally sniffing on it and looking right up at us because I was an idiot and made a move.
Yeah.
So from this hunt, moving forward into next year, looking at next year's hunt, whether you're behind the camera or behind a bow next year, what would you take from this hunt specifically going into Nebraska next year?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought about this kind of on our drive home and over the past few weeks as we've just been, replaying it in my mind.
Yeah, like what could we have done different?
I don't know how much we could have really done different. I think it was like unseasonably warm.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like in the afternoons it was getting like mid 50s, 60s, which is not ideal.
Well, the weather couldn't make up its mind while we were there either.
Right. It was, it was hot and it was cold and it was windy and then it was
dead calm.
Right. I just think that, didn't work to our advantage. But again, that's out of our control. Like we can't really, we can't change that. I don't know. I don't know what we could have done differently. I think we got to a spot where the deer were obviously moving because we were seeing bucks and does. We were seeing deer moving in that area regularly. Now they weren't necessarily always within range for us to be able to shoot,
right?
For you to be able to shoot. Sometimes they're moving, 300 yards here or across the field in front of us or whatever it was.
It was hard to tell where they were going to come from. And so you were like constantly having to keep your head on a swivel.
It was never, and I think the biggest thing that we could have done would be maybe even to get there a few days before we wanted to hunt.
Yeah. And
then just spend a little bit more time, on the edges and where we were too. It was very, very possible to sit on the roads and glass these woodlots and see, okay, it's 5 o'clock. There's a buck moving from that woodlot right there. and then being able to try to get a pattern on him a little bit more pinned down, and not just like, I feel like we got a little bit lucky with figuring out that was a honey hole, where it was like, we're kind of like, oh, we got a good wind, I guess we could go sit there, based on what the landowner had told us where there were deer. But I don't know how much more we could have done differently, except maybe having some more trail cameras out.
Heck,
and getting some more intel.
I'll tell you what I would do, what I would have done different. And I wish what I wish we could have had the ability to do. And I'm saying this too because I actually just got a couple of tethered saddles here at the house, but I wished we would have had some saddles, because you and I found like that shooter buck that kept skirting the field behind us, checking does 200 yards behind us. When you and I got back there that one morning after a hunt, there's a perfect tree, but it was not ladder stand friendly, and we didn't want to go in there and making a ton of noise.
We would have had to cut so many branches to get into that tree. It would have been right. We would have blown it out.
Yeah, but I think we could have cut the right branches to get some climbing sticks up there and get saddles up.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that would have made it to where we could have been more mobile, because, when Josh had gone out there to scout, game cameras and everything, it was a good game plan going in, but then it had completely changed when we got in there because of winds, because food sources had changed. The first morning that you and I were in there, there were 2 domestic dogs in there that had been on camera for the past 2 weeks that had basically blown that area up. And it was just completely different when Josh got out there. So I feel like if we would have been able to have 2 of those, one for you, one for me, that it would have allowed us to be more mobile and maybe get a little bit closer to some of these shooters that were skirting us.
Yeah, it's just giving us more options.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Josh was moving around a lot.
Yeah, I don't think he ever sat in the same spot twice.
I don't think they did. I don't think they did. But he killed. He
did.
Yeah, because he found a pretty dang good scrape, right?
Yeah, he found that scrape. I don't remember how he found it, but they came across that scrape, and he literally just went and made a little brush blind. And he did have the advantage of using a crossbow, where he can be mobile and hunt from the ground without having to move like you would using a compound.
Yeah.
That did work to his advantage, where it's just, sit on a tripod and not move.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he was constantly moving. He never sat in the same spot. That's crazy. I didn't think about that until just now.
Yeah, he never sat in the same spot, but he ended up killing.
Yeah.
But I mean, heck, I did pick up a crossbow that last morning. We were, shooting our Hail Mary shot, and
right.
Let's talk about how you and I just about damn near had one of the not damn near. We did have one of the craziest mornings of hunting, and it didn't even involve deer. Let's talk about that for a minute. And I want to preface this that we're from Texas, where there's a lot of predators. There's lots of coyotes. There's mountain lions. There's bobcats. But I have never heard as many coyotes as I have when we were in Nebraska. Like, it seemed like every morning, just before the sun was about to crack, you would just hear coyotes going nuts. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Well, what's funny is because we were making so much fun of Josh and Logan, because they were like, dude, I thought it was a mountain lion, and it was a porcupine, right? Like,
well, yeah, because
Tyler
showed us
listen to that episode, yeah, but there was a mountain lion out there, so like they were super freaked out, about it, and like, the whole incident where Logan kicked the porcupine, and they both freaked out and screamed, and so you and I were just roasting them, just letting them have it, making fun of them for it.
Yeah, we're like, oh, we're from Texas. Yeah, there's a mountain lion, whatever.
And then we get out there that last morning, and we're walking in,
and we're going to sit on the ground. We're going to sit on the ground.
Yeah. We're going to sit on the ground, like backs to a tree, no ground blind, just kind of out, trying to using the brush and a little bit of terrain to our advantage. Well, we tried to. And like as soon as we started walking, like well before daylight, the coyote started howling, like very close to us.
Well, and to let the listeners know, so where we were sitting on the ground, we had seen the shooter buck do the same thing. Was it 2 or 3 days in a row?
2 days in a row.
2 days in a row. This shooter buck, same time in the morning, came down the same path and went by this this tree. And so Aaron and I decided to make a game plan. It's like, okay, if this doesn't happen by the last morning, like we have one morning left, we're gonna go sit on the ground. I'm getting Josh's crossbow, and we're gonna go make it happen. Hopefully, he comes down the same path. And so we were only about 200 yards away from our tree stand. I'll let you.
And so, and I didn't say anything to you because it was, dark. We're trying to be quiet, getting in there and stuff. But I was like, holy shit, dude, that's a lot of coyotes, and they're not far from us at all. Like,
no, they sounded like they were right at our ladder stand.
Yeah, like they were probably 200 yards from us, and it was, I would have guessed probably 8 to 10 coyotes.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap, those are close. But like I didn't really think about it, and like I didn't give it another thought when they stopped.
No, we're from Texas. We're like, oh, it's just another coyote pack, whatever.
Whatever, yeah. So we get in there, get set up. We're sitting. I sit down. I get the camera situated. I turn my headlamp off. You finish getting situated, and behind me, I can hear leaves starting to move.
And you've got a big tree to your back too. I've got nothing behind me.
Right, you were kind of just out in the open a little bit. I was like, I wonder what that is. And it kept getting closer and closer and closer and closer. And then, like, if you've ever seen, like your dog in the backyard, like kind of like bouncing and playing with leaves or whatever, like, they kind of, it sounds, what that sounds like.
Yeah.
Like you could tell it wasn't a squirrel. It wasn't, it wasn't something else.
It wasn't a deer.
It wasn't a deer. Right. And then I could hear it breathing, and it's playing. It's like hunting a mouse. And I could hear it breathing, like bouncing around through the leaves. And it was
got the
like,
mouse though.
It did. And it was like, no shit, 6 feet behind me, like right behind this tree. And that's like literally the only time in my life I've ever been scared, because I didn't know. I thought it was like trying to like figure out what I was and like get around the tree.
Well,
and I was like,
yeah,
I was like, dude, I have this $4,000 camera on a tripod, and I'm about to use it as a fucking baseball bat to beat this coyote. Like that was what's going through my. I was game planning on what I was going to do if this coyote like came around the corner of this tree. Like I was like, I'm folding the tripod and I'm swinging this Sony A7 III at this coyote. Like I will beat it to death with a camera.
And meanwhile, like while this is going on, I'm sitting there thinking, oh great, Aaron's got a nice big tree behind him. I can hear more of these coyotes in front of me milling around like 3-4 yards. I can hear him sniffing. And I'm pretty sure like it was just getting light enough. Like I could see shadows, like I could see bodies in front, and you could just hear them all around us. Like it sounded like they were freaking getting the mice in the cedars next to us. And I'm thinking, great, he's got the big tree. I got nothing behind me. And then about that time, I just hear you go, dude, what the hell?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here counting my bolts. Like I'm sitting here counting the bolts. I'm like, I got my little pocket knife on me. I'm thinking, all right, Josh is probably going to be pissed because this is like a $7,000 package of a crossbow that's about to get used as a weapon. Like, this is not going to be good.
Yeah, no, his burst scope was not cheap. And I was thinking the same thing. I was like, I am about to use Will's camera as a baseball bat. But yeah, dude, that coyote behind me, that kind of like finally walked away. And I was like, dude, what the heck? And you like kind of like looked over your shoulder and like, we just like kind of made eye contact. And we were just like, that was crazy.
Yeah, I was. That is probably the most scared I've ever been while hunting, ever.
Yeah. And so like I've been around coyotes and mountain lions. Like I killed a lion underneath the tree that I had like a tripod in and killed a deer out of. Like it came out of the same thicket of my tripod. Yeah. Like I wasn't scared when I was hunting. And like after the fact, when I killed a lion, I was like, holy crap, that thing came 20 yards from where my tripod is.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of freaky. But like I wasn't scared of the moment, but like right then I literally thought that coyote was like smelling our footsteps and like trying to figure out what we were.
I think because that fence that was right behind us was wrapped in so many vines and branches, they were trying to figure out how to get through that fence to us.
They were trying to come around to us for sure.
Yeah, but then they came around front and probably realized what we were and decided to scatter. Well, let's get back to deer hunting. So I want to talk about rattling a little bit, grunt tubes, all that good stuff, bleeding. But the first thing I want to talk about is scent control. Because in Texas, you're either in a box blind, so you literally don't have to worry about scent most of the time. Or I've seen it in Texas before where I've had deer walk directly downwind of me. They just don't care. But up
Yeah.
in Nebraska, especially hunting how we were, where we weren't on a food source, we're just basically in this little honey hole intersection area. How important do you think our wind was?
For where we were, I think it was everything. Because I think it was everything because, there was times where, we could hear deer moving around us, but they wouldn't want to walk out into that field because they were like kind of like right on the edge of that scent cone.
Yeah.
And they would kind of like work the other way and then they'd end up swinging way around one way or the other way. Or I don't even know if I brought this up to you, but there was one instance where a little spike came in and literally got to where the trail that you and I walked in on, got to the trail, stuck its nose down, smelled where we stepped, picked its head up, turned around and walked the other way. Like didn't cross
rubber
our
boots
footsteps. On. Exactly. And so like I think it was everything. I think it was everything.
I agree, because in Texas you can get away with so much, man. And I'm sure you probably can in parts of Oklahoma, but majority of Texas, and there's probably going to be somebody that listens to this and comments like, "Oh, well, wind in Texas is everything." Blah blah blah. I'm sure it might be at your place, but the places I've been, like South Texas, Central Texas, North Texas, West Texas, I've hunted all around the state. I've had deer just don't give a crap. There have been instances where, yes, I've been busted, but I would be willing to say that 85 to 90% of the hunts that I've been on and deer have come in downwind, they don't care. They don't care.
Or if they do, you can tell they hit your scent cone and they'll stand there for like 2 minutes, kind of look around, and then they'll just keep walking through. Like they'll pause, but it won't just like immediately blow them out. I think in Texas, it's like deer densities and how much like people are always around, like farmers and ranchers or hunters or whatever it is. And so it's like, they're kind of like, oh, I smell something. And then they'll like wait for movement or wait to hear something. And then nothing happens. They'll just continue on to the feeder or wherever they're going.
Yeah. They may not have that scent associated with death like the deer up in Nebraska do.
Yeah. Those deer in Nebraska were super aware and turned on to our scent for sure.
Yeah. Finicky for sure. Let's talk rattling. Because I know in Texas, dude, deer go insane.
Yeah.
And the perception that I kind of had on the deer up here in Nebraska was like, oh, these deer aren't going to be like Texas. Now, granted, I think we only rattled in like a couple of small guys. Like no shooters came just running in, but we had some small bucks come in pretty fast like they do in Texas. Like what was your viewpoint on that? Were you kind of like me, like going into it thinking, these deer aren't going to be like our Texas deer. They're not going to give a crap about the rattling.
No, I figured they would. I tend to be under the belief that like deer is a deer. It doesn't matter where you put it. Like if you took a deer from Nebraska and put it in Texas, there's not going to be like a huge behavioral difference.
Yeah.
Other than like, associations with smell and humans or feeders or whatever.
And temperature.
But right. But I think, it's like a human. If someone goes fight, everyone's going to run and look at it. Like that's just, that's their nature as deer. If they hear rattling or they hear that grunt, like it's going to be in their nature to want to come investigate.
Except that one shooter buck that, when I grunted at him,
and I think he was just on that doe so much that he just didn't, because he was trailing that doe hard.
Yeah, he was fixing to be locked down.
You tried to grunt him and get him to come to your grunt, and he kind of looked at us and was like, "Nah, screw that. I'm gonna keep chasing this doe."
Yeah.
But I think deer are just deer, man. I think, if you're in the right spot at the right time and you rattle, bucks are gonna want to come investigate, regardless of what part of the country you're in.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree, and I know that now because, like, kind of going into it, I never really saw guys rattling on TV up north anywhere like that. Like I probably saw some people doing it in like Kansas, Oklahoma, but never really saw it that much unless they were in Texas. And then when we got up there, I was like, huh, okay, so this actually works up here. And
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I said what I will be doing when we go to Arizona in January to chase after some muleys during their rut, I will be taking the rattling horns for that.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. To rattle and immediately, that'd just be cool. But like I had never really associated those two things together, like watching those guys hunt, Illinois or Ohio or Iowa or wherever they're at. Like I never really like associated rattling with being like this Texas thing until like recently, where it's kind of like, oh wait, y'all don't like rattle a lot like that, or like I figured maybe it was because you're in a tree stand and you can't get away with as much or whatever it was. I didn't really associate it with being like this predominantly Texas thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, hell, that reel I posted on our socials, I was getting ripped up by some guys that were like, "Oh, you're rattling too much." Oh, no, no, like that's not right. That doesn't sound like deer. I'm like, well, in Texas, I've done this and killed a lot of deer doing this, and guess what? We rattled in a couple bucks doing it up here too.
yeah, and it's like I think I don't know, man. Everything I've done it a lot. I've rattled a lot. I'm sure there's some guy that's listening that's going to go, "I've been rattling longer than you've been alive," and that might be true. But I've rattled in, you know, 50, 70, $100 in my lifetime. A lot. Like,
Yeah.
Enough to have a good sample size of I don't think the sequence, like how you do it matters that much. I think the biggest thing for rattling is just being loud. Those deer have to hear it. If they don't hear it, it doesn't matter how great your sequence is or if it sounds like two bucks fighting. Like if that deer's out of earshot and it can't hear it, it doesn't matter. And so I think you just have to be loud. And I think at that where like when we were there and what the rut should have been like, those deer should have been fighting and going crazy and rattling. Like I think again, on paper, what should have been happening, I don't think you could have rattled too much.
No.
For that point in time, like those bucks should have been fired up, going crazy and rattling, and they should have been up and cruising. And so, like, if you wait 30 minutes, that buck could have covered a half a mile, and now he can hear you, like, rattle again. And if he hears you, he's going to come flying in to investigate. And I think it's just, like maybe pre-rut or post-rut. Obviously, post-rut you really wouldn't rattle, but like pre-rut, you may be a little bit more selective on how you do it and when you do it. But like we were like it should have been peak rut. Those bucks should have been going crazy.
Dude.
I think doing it as much and as loud as you can is a good thing.
Yeah. I'll tell you. So when we got back from this hunt, I went up and got in a tree stand on our place in Texas, and I think it was you that had showed me a video of Josh Bomar tying 3 antlers together and then dropping them to the ground from your ladder stand and just shaking it so you're not moving as much. So when a deer comes in, you can just drop the string.
Yeah, you sent me that.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah,
so
you sent it to me.
I never told you this. I actually went up, got in my tree stand, did that, and I actually rattled in a small buck doing that.
Yeah.
Because you dropping those antlers to the ground, you're rattling it, you're making noise on the ground, making it sound like 2 bucks are actually stomping around the ground, you're screwing up, leaves, you're crashing into branches and stuff with it. And within like 30 seconds, I had this small buck come in, and I'm like, huh, okay. I know what I'm doing up in a tree stand from now on.
Yeah, I think too, if you're by yourself in a tree stand, that would be a very effective way to do it because, like you said, you could just shake it with one hand, you can drop it and then grab your bow quick enough. Like if you were just doing traditional rattling and then trying to put those down somewhere and then trying to get your bow and get your release, like that would be a lot to do if a shooter did come in. So I like that idea.
Oh, I'll do it in Nebraska next year for sure because I felt like that was one of the things we were missing was, when I first had my introduction in the outdoor industry, it was through Wade Middleton. And that dude, like when he rattles in December in South Texas, it sounds like all hell's breaking loose. But he rattled in some giant bucks. And I feel like if you can do that by dropping the antlers, a set of 3 tied together, dropping it to the ground and just making it go up and down, you're hitting the tree, you're hitting branches, you're hitting leaves and everything, just make it sound like a real fight. I felt like that was something we were missing in Nebraska that I will definitely do next year.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to like just making as much noise as possible.
Yeah.
I don't think the way that you hit the antlers together, but it's just like it's the combination of those 3 antlers hitting the ground and hitting branch. Like, it's just a lot of commotion, and that's what gets those deer's attention. And like, you've seen the videos I've posted, like I've sent you of deer that I've rattled, and just and then you saw me rattle, where like I'm trying to break those antlers in half. Like, I'm trying to be as loud as I can.
And I broke your antlers.
Yeah, and you broke my antlers, which I was proud of you for. I didn't think you were that strong.
Yeah.
So yeah, good job on that.
Yeah, that's right. You learn a thing. you can learn a thing or two from Daddy. Yeah, that's right.
So you got to stop referring to yourself in that way. It's kind of weird. But yeah, I like that idea a lot. And I think I had seen Snyder say something about it before, but I never paid attention to it, like put it together. And then you sent me that video. I was like, oh, that's a good idea. I don't necessarily like the way Josh Beaumont portrayed the idea, but
it works.
If it works, and like I again, on paper it sounds amazing and it should work.
Yeah.
And obviously, you got a buck to come in, so.
I did, man. I did. Well, dude, let's talk, moving into next year. We're going to try and do this. We're going to try and do some public land stuff. So I'm really looking forward to it. But tell the
DIY?
Yeah, DIY. I want to do some unguided public land. We're going to sneak out Kansas, hopefully. I'm going to put in for a
over the
tag
counter?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're going to do some Colorado stuff. We're going to do some Arizona stuff. We're going to do it all, man. DIY, baby. DIY. We're going to get in our
DIY
saddles.
public land, unguided, over the counter?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can we wear jeans and flannels too?
Exactly. Yeah. We're going to have Pnuma jeans and Pnuma flannel. So
perfect.
JK.
Perfect.
JK. Just so listeners don't think we're actually going to do that.
Yeah, that was a joke. We were no.
Yeah. Well, man, I think we're just about running out of time here. I'm glad we got to just, kind of go over Nebraska, talk about, the transition for some Texas dudes to go up to Nebraska, bridge that gap a little bit. And I'm going to get Dan on here. We're going to bridge the gap back to Texas so we can kind of squash all this nonsense. But
yeah, I'm interested to hear Dan's take and what he thinks of it, just because, I have my perception of Texas hunting, but
oh yeah,
someone like him who's, spent 20, 30 years doing mule deer and elk out west, and then coming and doing it and seeing, that epiphany, that light bulb moment where it's like, oh, this is different than what everyone portrays it to be on social media or TV.
Yeah. And everybody has their different perceptions, but either way, we're all still hunters. That's all that matters. So let's tell the listeners real quick before we log off here where they can find you on socials, especially if there's anybody out there that wants to get my boy Aaron for some contract work, for some camera work, if you want to do that. I don't know if you do.
Yeah, I would be down to do some if it, if the situation was appropriate and I had time to. I'm definitely always down to go take pictures and videos for people if I can make it work. So I guess my own social is Instagram, and it's just _ Aaron Gettys, AARON GETTYS.
Mr. G Money. Mr. G Money.
That's it.
He does a good job at taking photos, videos. Moves around like a kid in the stand, but that's okay. I can put up with that.
Don't.
And the bill that you have to foot to feed this dude. Oh my god.
Don't. Oh my god, dude! You sat in my stand the second time, and you made way more noise than I did.
No.
Yes,
I think it's
bro.
because that stand was like right at ear level with whoever was sitting below.
It sounds like, even if you just like shift your weight like that, it just sounds super loud. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it does. Well, man, I appreciate you hopping on the podcast, and then we'll probably get you on here again. But I just want to thank you for your time and talking some deer hunting.
For sure, man. I appreciate you. Appreciate you having me come to Nebraska with you and getting to talk some more about it.